Michael Torres adjusted his telephoto lens, focusing on the waterhole where a small herd of Cape buffalo had gathered in the late afternoon heat. As lead cinematographer for the BBC wildlife documentary Predators of the Savannah, he'd spent 3 weeks capturing footage of hyena clan dynamics in South Africa's largest game reserve. "We've got movement at the Western Ridge," radioed Jennifer Park, the documentary's field biologist, from her observation vehicle positioned 200 meters away. Clan matriarch leading approximately 15 members toward the waterhole. Michael panned his camera to capture the approaching hyenas. Spotted hyenas were highly intelligent social predators, and their clan structure fascinated researchers. This particular clan, dubbed the Crocodile Bridge Clan by park researchers, had been the documentary's primary subject for the past month. "They're going to test the buffalo," predicted Dr. Sibusiso Ndlovu, the wildlife consultant riding with Michael's crew. At 61, he'd spent 40 years studying African predator-prey dynamics and could read animal behavior like others read text. The buffalo herd, about 20 animals including several calves, became visibly alert as the hyenas approached. Adult buffalo formed a defensive circle around younger members, their massive horns facing outward, textbook herd protection behavior that Michael had filmed dozens times. But one bull remained separate from the herd, standing alone near the water's edge. He was massive even by Cape buffalo standards, easily 1,800 pounds with horn spread measuring over a meter. What made him remarkable was his age. The worn horn tips and scarred hide suggested he was well past prime breeding years, likely pushed to the herd's periphery by younger, more aggressive males. "Isolated individual," Dr. Ndlovu noted, his voice carrying professional interest rather than concern. "Prime target for clan testing. This could be significant footage if they engage." Michael switched to his second camera, the one equipped for rapid action sequences. Documentary crews spent weeks waiting for moments like this, natural predator-prey interactions that revealed authentic animal behavior rather than manufactured drama. The hyena clan spread into a loose semicircle, their approach coordinated through vocalizations too subtle for human ears to distinguish, but clearly meaningful to pack members. The lead female, a battle-scarred matriarch the research team had named Scar, moved with the confidence of an apex predator that had survived 15 years in one of Africa's most competitive ecosystems. The isolated bull turned to face the approaching clan, his massive body shifting into a defensive stance that lowered his horns and presented his heaviest armor, the reinforced boss protecting his skull. Michael's camera captured the moment in crystal clarity. 15 hyenas creating a threatening perimeter around a solitary bull who'd been separated from his herd's protection. "Rolling on all cameras," Michael confirmed into his radio. "Jennifer, are you getting the wide shot?" "Confirmed. Audio equipment recording vocalizations. This is going to be remarkable footage regardless of outcome." What happened next would challenge everything the documentary crew thought they understood about Cape buffalo behavior under pressure. The hyena clan moved with coordinated precision, each member maintaining specific distance from the isolated bull while gradually tightening the semicircle. Michael Torres kept his primary camera focused on the bull's face, capturing the animal's alert eyes, tracking multiple threats simultaneously. "Classic mobbing behavior," Dr. Ndlovu narrated quietly for the documentary's audio track. "The clan isn't attempting immediate engagement. They're testing response patterns, looking for signs of weakness or panic that would indicate a vulnerable target." 3 younger hyenas darted forward in coordinated rushes, stopping just outside the bull's charge range. The bull pivoted smoothly despite his size, keeping his armored head facing the nearest threats. His movements were economical, conserving energy while maintaining defensive positioning. "Notice he's not charging," Jennifer Park observed over the radio. Experienced bulls know that breaking formation to chase one hyena leaves them vulnerable to attacks from other directions. He's demonstrating remarkable discipline. What struck Michael most was the bull's complete lack of panic. Animals under threat typically showed physiological stress, elevated breathing, nervous movements, signs of flight response preparation. This bull stood with the calm of something that had faced similar situations before and understood the mathematics of survival. The clan matriarch, Scar, vocalized, a distinctive whooping call that brought the other hyenas into tighter formation. 4 more members rushed forward simultaneously from different angles, a coordinated probe designed to force the bull into choosing which threat to address, thereby exposing his flanks or hindquarters to others. The bull's response was extraordinary. Instead of pivoting to face individual threats, he backed toward a large termite mound, using the natural structure to protect his rear quarter. The strategic repositioning reduced his vulnerable angles by nearly 40%, forcing the hyenas to concentrate their approach from a narrower arc. "Did you catch that?" Dr. Ndlovu's voice carried genuine excitement. "That was tactical use of terrain. Buffalo are intelligent animals, but that level of spatial awareness is remarkable. He just negated their numerical advantage by restricting their approach vectors." Michael adjusted his camera angle to capture both the bull's new defensive position and the hyena's response to the changed circumstances. The clan members vocalized among themselves, their communication suggesting reassessment of the situation. For 20 minutes, the standoff continued. The hyenas probed repeatedly, testing different approach angles, but the bull maintained his position against the termite mound, his massive horns tracking each movement. No panic, no exhaustion, just patient defensive vigilance. "I've filmed dozens of buffalo-hyena interactions," Michael said, reviewing footage on his secondary monitor. "I've never seen an individual maintain this kind of composed defense for this long. Usually they either panic and run, which triggers pursuit, or the herd intervenes." Jennifer Park's voice came over the radio with new observation data. "The main buffalo herd moved approximately 400 meters northwest while we've been focused on this encounter. They've completely abandoned the isolated individual. That's unusual. Buffalo typically show stronger herd cohesion." Dr. Ndlovu considered this information, which suggests the other buffalo recognized something about this individual that made them comfortable leaving him to handle the situation independently. Age and experience, perhaps. Bulls that survive to advanced years do so by learning precisely this kind of threat management. The hyena clan's energy was visibly waning. Mobbing behavior was energetically expensive, and this bull's refusal to panic or expose vulnerabilities was forcing them to expend resources without clear payoff. 3 younger clan members had already disengaged, wandering toward the waterhole to drink. Scar, the matriarch, made one final assessment approach, a direct advance that brought her within 5 meters of the bull's horns. The bull lowered his head slightly, a clear signal of readiness to engage if she closed further distance. For 10 seconds, predator and prey locked in a silent calculation of risk versus reward. Then Scar turned away, vocalizing to her clan. Within 2 minutes, the entire group had disengaged, moving back toward the western ridge from which they'd originally approached. The bull remained in his defensive position for another 5 minutes, watching the hyenas retreat. Only when they disappeared beyond the ridge did he finally step away from the termite mound and walk calmly back toward the waterhole. "That was absolutely extraordinary," Michael said, checking his camera's recording status. "We just documented a solitary buffalo successfully deterring an entire hyena clan through defensive strategy and composure." Dr. Ndlovu was making rapid notes. "I need to review this footage extensively. That bull demonstrated problem-solving ability and tactical awareness that I've rarely seen documented in Cape Buffalo. The terrain use, the energy conservation, the refusal to take vulnerable actions, that was masterclass survival behavior." Jennifer Park had already begun cataloging the footage for the documentary's research archive. "This is going to be significant for buffalo behavioral studies. We need to try to track this individual, get more data about his history, and how he developed these capabilities." As the sun lowered toward the horizon, painting the savanna in gold and amber light, the bull drank peacefully at the waterhole. No injuries, no exhaustion, no sign that he'd just faced a potentially lethal encounter. Just an old bull who'd learned through decades of survival that sometimes the most effective defense was refusing to become what predators expected. Jennifer Park spread satellite tracking data across the research tent's main table, comparing GPS coordinates from multiple observation periods over the past 72 hours. The documentary crew had shifted focus from general hyena behavior to specifically tracking the solitary bull whose defensive capabilities had proven so exceptional. "He's covering approximately 12 kilometers daily," Jennifer reported to the assembled crew. "That's within normal range for adult Cape buffalo, but his route selection is interesting. He's consistently choosing terrain with natural defensive features, rock outcroppings, dense vegetation clusters, elevated ground. Michael Torres reviewed footage from 3 separate filming sessions. We've documented 5 more interactions between this bull and various predator species, 2 with different hyena clans, 2 with lionesses, 1 with a leopard. In every case, he successfully deterred approach through positioning and defensive display, 0 injuries sustained. Dr. Ndlovu was consulting with park rangers who had historical knowledge of the area's buffalo population. I spoke with Senior Ranger Thabo Mokoena this morning. He's worked this sector for 18 years. He believes this is the same individual they've been observing since 2005, an exceptionally old bull, possibly 25 to 30 years old. That would make him ancient by Cape Buffalo standards, Jennifer said. The species' typical lifespan in wild conditions ranged 15 to 20 years, with very few individuals reaching mid-20s. How has he survived this long? According to ranger observations accumulated over nearly 2 decades, through exactly the behavior we've been documenting, he's never been observed in panic flight response. He consistently uses terrain strategically, and he appears to have learned predator behavior patterns well enough to anticipate their tactics. The documentary's director, Amanda Walsh, had flown in from Johannesburg to review the footage personally. She watched the termite mound sequence 3 times before speaking. This is extraordinary material, but I need to understand the scientific validity. Are we documenting genuinely exceptional animal intelligence, or are we projecting human interpretation onto instinctive behavior? Dr. Ndlovu pulled up comparative research data on his laptop. Cape buffalo demonstrate problem-solving abilities in laboratory settings. They can learn to operate mechanisms, recognize patterns, and remember solutions. What makes this individual remarkable is the application of those capabilities in complex, life-threatening situations requiring real-time tactical decisions. Can we establish whether he learned these behaviors through experience or if there's something genetically exceptional about this individual? Amanda asked. Jennifer had been researching that question for 2 days. We'd need genetic samples to assess hereditary factors, which isn't feasible with a wild animal. But the experience hypothesis is supported by his age. 3 decades of surviving predator encounters provides extensive opportunity for behavioral learning. The crew spent the following week conducting intensive observation, documenting the bull's daily patterns. He maintained loose association with his herd, but spent significant time at the periphery, often positioning himself between the main group and likely predator approach routes. He's functioning as an early warning system, Michael observed during one filming session. His peripheral position means he encounters threats before they reach the herd. And his defensive capabilities mean those encounters rarely escalate to situations requiring herd intervention. Dr. Ndlovu was particularly interested in the bull's interactions with younger herd members. On 2 occasions, they documented juvenile buffalo observing the old bull's defensive behavior from safe distances. If younger animals are learning through observation, this individual could be passing tactical knowledge across generations. The documentary footage was generating significant interest beyond the immediate crew. Amanda had shared preliminary cuts with wildlife behaviorists at 3 major universities, all of whom expressed interest in using the material for research purposes. Dr. Marion Fisher from the University of Pretoria wants to conduct a formal behavioral study, Amanda reported after a video conference. She's proposing a 3-year observation program documenting this bull's tactics and measuring whether younger herd members show similar behaviors after exposure to him. The implications extended beyond one exceptional animal. If Cape buffalo could learn and apply complex defensive strategies through experience and potentially observation, it suggested cognitive capabilities more sophisticated than previously documented in the species. On the 8th day of intensive tracking, the crew witnessed something that crystallized the bull's significance. A young buffalo, separated from the herd during a river crossing, found himself isolated on the far bank with a clan of hyenas approaching. Instead of panic, the young bull moved deliberately to position himself against a fallen tree, mimicking the defensive terrain use the old bull had demonstrated repeatedly. That juvenile just used the exact tactical response we've seen from our primary subject, Jennifer said, reviewing the footage. Either that's coincidental instinct, or we're watching learned behavior transmission. Dr. Ndlovu's voice carried the careful excitement of a researcher witnessing something potentially significant. If we can establish that younger buffalo are learning these tactics through observation of experienced individuals, we're documenting cultural transmission of survival strategies in Cape buffalo. That has profound implications for understanding how prey species adapt to predator pressure across generations. The documentary that had begun as standard predator-prey coverage was evolving into something more nuanced, a study of how individual animals developed exceptional capabilities through experience, and how those capabilities might spread through populations via learning rather than purely genetic inheritance. The conference room at Skukuza Rest Camp held 23 wildlife researchers, park officials, and documentary crew members reviewing 6 weeks of accumulated footage. Dr. Marion Fisher from the University of Pretoria had flown in specifically to evaluate whether the observed behaviors justified formal research classification. We've documented 42 separate encounters between this individual and various predator species, Jennifer Park presented, using laser pointer to highlight data points on projected maps. Success rate in deterring engagement, 100%. Injuries sustained, 0. Average encounter duration before predator disengagement, 18 minutes. Dr. Fisher studied the statistical analysis carefully. The consistency is remarkable, but I need to address the central methodological question. Are we observing learned tactical behavior, or are we documenting an individual whose physical condition and age simply make him an unappealing target? Michael Torres queued up footage from multiple encounters, edited to show comparative sequences. Notice the deliberate terrain selection in every case. He's not stumbling into defensive positions randomly. He's actively choosing locations that limit approach vectors before encounters even begin. The footage showed the bull positioning himself near rock formations, dense vegetation, or water features that restricted predator maneuverability. In 3 separate incidents filmed from different angles, the crew had captured him apparently assessing terrain options before selecting specific locations to rest or graze. That suggests anticipatory planning, noted Dr. Sibusiso Ndlovu. He's not reacting to immediate threats. He's structuring his environment to prepare for potential threats that haven't materialized yet. Dr. Fisher requested to see the footage of younger buffalo potentially learning from observation. Michael showed the sequence of the juvenile mimicking defensive positioning near the fallen tree, followed by 2 additional examples of younger animals using similar tactics after documented proximity to the old bull. 3 cases of apparent observational learning in 6 weeks, Dr. Fisher said. That's not statistically significant for establishing cultural transmission, but it's suggestive enough to warrant longitudinal study. Amanda Walsh, the documentary director, had brought preliminary viewer response data from the footage already released through BBC preview channels. We're seeing extraordinary engagement from both scientific communities and general audiences. The narrative of an individual animal developing expertise through experience resonates broadly. Park management was particularly interested in the implications for their conservation strategies. Senior Warden David Kruger addressed the group directly. If prey species can develop and transmit defensive strategies that reduce predation success, that affects our understanding of predator-prey dynamics across the entire ecosystem. We need to know whether this is exceptional individual variation or evidence of adaptive capacity we've underestimated. The discussion shifted to research methodology for a formal multi-year study. Dr. Fisher outlined her proposal: continuous monitoring of the target bull plus 20 younger individuals showing proximity to him with control group observation of buffalo without regular contact. The study would track defensive behavior patterns, measure predator encounter outcomes, and attempt to quantify whether observed tactical knowledge transferred across individuals. Funding is the primary constraint, Dr. Fisher admitted. Longitudinal field studies of this scope require approximately $180,000 annually for equipment, personnel, and analysis. Amanda Walsh surprised the room with immediate response. BBC Science will commit $75,000 annually for 3 years if we can secure matching funds and maintain documentary access to the research. This story has commercial and educational value that justifies investment. 2 conservation foundations represented at the meeting pledged additional funding contingent on peer review of the research protocol. By the end of the session, Dr. Fisher had commitments totaling $160,000 annually, not quite full funding, but enough to launch a scaled version of her proposed study. The old bull, unofficially designated Subject Alpha in research protocols, had become the center of what might prove to be significant behavioral ecology research. His decades of survival experience were being systematically documented, analyzed, and evaluated for evidence that prey species possessed greater adaptive intelligence than conventional models suggested. 3 days later, Michael filmed what would become the documentary's climactic sequence. Subject Alpha, positioned near his customary defensive terrain, was approached by a coalition of 3 young male lions, a significantly more dangerous threat than hyena clans. The encounter lasted 37 minutes, during which the bull used every tactical element the crew had previously documented: terrain restriction, energy conservation, refusal to expose vulnerabilities, and patient defensive positioning. The lions eventually disengaged without attempting direct attack, their body language suggesting they'd assessed the risk-reward calculation and found it unfavorable. Subject Alpha walked calmly to the waterhole afterward, as though nothing exceptional had occurred. "That bull just successfully deterred 3 male lions through pure defensive strategy," Michael said, reviewing the footage. "No injuries, no panic, no desperate flight response. Just calculated, experienced survival behavior." Dr. Ndlovu's voice carried the weight of 4 decades studying African wildlife. "In my entire career, I've never seen an individual prey animal demonstrate this level of consistent tactical capability against multiple predator species. Whether this represents individual exceptional development or evidence of broader adaptive potential, it's rewriting assumptions about prey intelligence and learning capacity." The documentary that had begun as standard predator coverage had become something unprecedented. Evidence that individual animals could develop sophisticated survival expertise through experience, potentially passing that knowledge to others, and challenging fundamental assumptions about the cognitive capabilities of prey species in predator-dominated ecosystems. The BBC documentary The Tactician, A Buffalo Story, premiered to 4.2 million viewers across European markets, with streaming numbers suggesting global reach exceeding 12 million within the first month. Michael Torres watched the final cut in a Johannesburg hotel room, recognizing how their accidental discovery of one exceptional bull had evolved into a narrative challenging fundamental assumptions about prey animal intelligence. Dr. Asa Marion Fisher's formal research program had enrolled 43 Cape buffalo across 6 different herds, tracking defensive behavior patterns and measuring predator encounter outcomes. 8 months of systematic observation had produced preliminary data that supported the observational learning hypothesis. Younger buffalo demonstrating proximity to Subject Alpha showed statistically significant improvement in defensive positioning and terrain utilization compared to control groups. "We're not claiming these animals are conducting tactical planning in the way humans would understand it," Dr. Fisher explained during a research symposium at the University of Cape Town. "But the data strongly suggests Cape buffalo possess greater adaptive learning capacity than previous behavioral models acknowledged." Subject Alpha represents decades of accumulated survival experience translated into consistent defensive success. The old bull himself remained in his territory, now tracked by GPS collar that researchers had managed to fit during a carefully coordinated darting operation. The collar transmitted location data and biometric information, allowing the research team to monitor his health and movement patterns without constant physical observation. Senior Ranger Thabo Mokoena had incorporated Subject Alpha into park educational programs, leading safari groups to observation points where visitors could safely watch the legendary bull from appropriate distances. The interpretive narrative emphasized scientific observation and conservation rather than dramatized danger. "This animal has survived 3 decades in one of Africa's most challenging ecosystems," Thabo explained to a group of international tourists. "Not through aggression or size, but through learning, adaptation, and apparently teaching younger members of his species defensive strategies that improve their survival odds." The documentary's impact extended beyond entertainment. 3 additional universities had launched related studies examining learning capacity in other prey species. Conservation organizations were using Subject Alpha's story to illustrate how individual animals contribute to species adaptation, supporting arguments for protecting experienced individuals rather than focusing exclusively on younger breeding stock. Jennifer Park had transitioned from documentary field biologist to lead researcher on Dr. Fisher's team, coordinating the multi-herd observation program. Her analysis of 8 months of data revealed patterns that suggested the learning effect was measurable but not dramatic. Younger buffalo showing proximity to tactically sophisticated individuals demonstrated approximately 15 to 20% improvement in successful predator deterrence compared to those without such exposure. It's not a magic solution to predation pressure, Jennifer cautioned during a research presentation, but a 15-20% improvement in survival odds across a population over multiple generations could have significant evolutionary implications. Michael Torres had returned to Kruger twice more, filming follow-up sequences for a documentary series extension. During his most recent visit, he captured footage of Subject Alpha interacting with a young bull, showing distinctive tactical behavior, terrain positioning, energy conservation, refusal to panic under predator pressure. That juvenile is displaying the same defensive patterns we documented in Subject Alpha, Michael noted, reviewing the footage with Dr. Ndlovu. If this is learned behavior transmission, we're watching it happen in real time. Dr. Ndlovu, now serving as formal advisor to Dr. Fisher's research program, had published preliminary findings in the Journal of African Ecology. The paper, co-authored with Jennifer Park and Dr. L. Fisher, presented evidence for experience-based tactical learning in Cape Buffalo and had generated substantial discussion in wildlife behavioral research communities. The old bull's GPS data showed he maintained his patterns: 12-kilometer daily ranges, consistent selection of defensible terrain, peripheral positioning relative to his herd. At an estimated 30 years old, he was approaching the absolute limit of Cape Buffalo lifespan, but his biometric data suggested he remained in remarkably good condition. One morning, during routine GPS tracking review, Jennifer noticed Subject Alpha had remained stationary for 18 hours, unusual for an animal that typically maintained steady daily movement. Dr. Fisher authorized immediate field investigation. The research team found Subject Alpha resting in dense vegetation near a rocky outcropping, his breathing labored but stable. Dr. Kim van der Walt, the veterinarian who'd fitted his GPS collar, conducted field examination and determined the bull was experiencing age-related cardiac stress, not immediately life-threatening, but indicative of systems beginning to fail after 3 decades of use. "He's dying," Dr. van der Walt said quietly after completing examination. "Not today, probably not this month, but his body is shutting down gradually. 6 months, maybe a year at most." The team made the decision not to intervene medically. Subject Alpha was wild animal who'd lived a full natural lifespan. Extending it artificially would serve research convenience rather than the animal's welfare. Over the following weeks, Subject Alpha's movement patterns slowed. He remained with his herd, but spent increasing time resting. Younger bulls who'd previously shown deference now approached more boldly, recognizing the old bull's declining dominance. On a morning 3 months after the cardiac episode, park rangers found Subject Alpha had died peacefully during the night, his body positioned in the shade of an acacia tree near the termite mound, where he'd first demonstrated his tactical brilliance to the documentary crew 10 months earlier. Dr. Fisher arranged for the carcass to be documented and samples collected for research before allowing natural decomposition. The GPS collar was retrieved, its data representing nearly a year of tracking one of the most studied individual Cape buffalo in research history. "Subject Alpha's death is not the end of this research," Dr. Fisher told her team during a memorial gathering at the research camp. "The younger animals he influenced are still alive, still demonstrating improved defensive behaviors. We're tracking 43 individuals whose survival odds may have been improved by proximity to one exceptionally experienced bull. That's his legacy, evidence that prey species can learn, adapt, and potentially teach survival strategies across generations." The documentary that had captured Subject Alpha's tactical brilliance had been viewed by over 20 million people globally. His story had inspired 4 formal research programs, generated 12 published papers, and fundamentally shifted how behavioral ecologists thought about learning capacity in prey species. Michael Torres kept one photograph framed in his home office. Subject Alpha standing calmly at the waterhole after successfully deterring the 3 male lions. His scarred hide and worn horns telling stories of 3 decades surviving in Africa's most challenging wilderness. not through size or aggression, but through intelligence, experience, and the patient accumulation of tactical knowledge that defied conventional understanding of prey animal capabilities. Hyena's massive attack bull. The bull's reaction shocked safari crew.